All right, let's call to order this special meeting of the Mason City Council for March 29th, 2021. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Whipple,
Here from Mason, Michigan.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Present, Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Clark,
Present in Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Josha,
Here from Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Ferris is absent, Councilmember Schaefer,
Here from Mason.
and Councilmember Vogel.
Here from Mason, Michigan.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comment. I'm not seeing anybody from the public, only city employees and city council members. And I don't have anything in writing to report, so we will pass by public comment with none being present. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing related to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources 2021 Trust Fund, Land and Water Conservation Fund, and Recreation Passport Grants to assist with the proposed Rainer Park playground improvements. Following the public hearing, we'll be considering Resolution 2021-07, which would approve submission of the grant applications to the Michigan DNR Trust Fund grant to assist with Rainer Park playground. So we'll open the public hearing and allow anyone who's present who wishes to speak 3 minutes. But again, I'm still seeing nobody from the public in the meeting. And seeing nobody come on or waiting in the waiting room, we'll declare the public hearing closed. So we have resolution 2021-07. Which is a resolution approving the submittal for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources 2021 Trust Fund grant to assist with the proposed Rainer Park playground improvements. Would anyone like to make a motion to introduce this resolution?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Clark.
I would move that we consider resolution number 2021-07 as being read.
Well, we don't have to consider it read. You want to introduce it?
I did that too.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Clark, second by DeRosa to approve resolution 2021-07. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, then would you please give us the roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris is still absent, Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. Resolution is adopted 6-0 with 1 absent. Next, under unfinished business, we have resolution 2021-06, which is adoption of the capital improvements program for fiscal years 2021 through 2027. Refresh my memory, had this resolution already been moved at our last meeting?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. It was
Okay.
moved by Brown, seconded by Josha.
Thank you. So it was deferred, so it's now before us. One thing I guess I would ask is, we've all had plenty of time to read through it. We've had a couple meetings to discuss it. If there's any changes that people would like to make to the capital improvements program, I would ask that make your request in the form of a motion of a project you want to move or change or delete. And then we'll go through them one at a time and deal with it that way. If you've got general questions still about the capital improvements program, then obviously part of the discussion on this resolution would include that. So any discussion, Councilmember Schaefer?
Just have a question. This isn't the only time we can change it. Is that correct?
The capital improvements program could, I guess, technically be changed at any time by the council action. But what will be adopted tonight will be what drives the, I'm guessing, budget proposal that we will ultimately consider in May. But we can always adjust the capital improvements program. It's just it's a document that the council owns, so we can change it anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vogel.
I have like kind of a series of questions, but I don't think they need to be removed. It's just clarifying.
Go
So
ahead.
like, all right. For City Hall, the parking lot, it's 2017 B7 at 40K. I didn't remember if we had, because we had discussion about the City Hall parking lot also being the fire department parking lot. But then later I see the fire department, which is projected for 2025-26. Is that a separate? Or are these kind of both together? The current one for City Hall is for 2021-22 budget year. I just wanted to, because I just thought it was the whole entire parking lot, including the fire department area.
City manager?
Yeah, so the projects that are in the next fiscal year include the parking lot repairs as well as the rear approach to the fire station. So then when you go out to 25, 26, let me pull up that narrative. You're looking at, I'm just trying to find exactly where you were looking. Parking lot repairs, building, under building 20B2.
Yeah, 20B2.
So that actually is parking lot of all parking lots in downtown. So seal coating and some other things throughout downtown. If you look at the narrative, it repairs the parking lots, including behind the courthouse pub, behind the Hilliard building, any minor repairs to the city hall, as well as the lot behind Keen's.
I guess I see it, it's under fire department building, so I didn't see that it's everybody downtown. Okay, and then carpet, furniture, cars. And then for DPW, the school district meeting 2 weeks ago, they discussed meeting with you about the DPW structure and shared garage and tools and that type of thing. I just wondered, you know, is this something for us to kind of consider right now as we look at the budget? Does this look like they want to team up with us to save costs?
If you're willing, I do have some discussion about that in the presentation during the budget meeting. If you, or I can discuss it now, either way, but I do have some slides actually talking about the design and in that meeting. So whatever you would prefer.
Okay, I'm just trying to go through all my CIP questions so that when we're in the budget, I have a better understanding of our finances.
Well, I can tell you this, that the discussion with schools would not impact the cost associated with the city for the DPW. So what's in the budget in the CIP is what we anticipate the city's cost towards the project.
All right, and then Lee Austin Park 2020 P6. I thought that was further down the road, but it's for this budget year. I guess I was hoping we could hold off on that. Is there, like, do we need to do that one right away, or could we wait and get some like historic grant funding? Because that bridge also needs to be repaired, and I know that because it's over 100 years old, we could get more money from the historic grants potentially.
Well, the
I'm
reason,
just wondering if
yeah.
that's a good way to look forward to saving money.
Michelle, do you see the note for Councilmember Ferris? Making sure you're unblocking her. So when it comes to Lee Austin, the plan is a priority to do now because one, we have to get approval from the property owners associated with that park that are not the city, and they have requested a plan to react to in order to forward with the project. And this is a plan that's funded by the DDA because it's the only park that's in the DDA. And so they are taking on the responsibility of funding that plan. It is in the year that it's in because we know that the bridge and street construction are going to be following in 2 years. So we want to make sure that we're coordinating the project, whatever it is, with that.
Okay, and then
Then, and just to be clear, that's just the plan. That's not the actual implementation. The implementation is where we would see grant funding and things like that. So,
All right. And then I just also wanted to echo, last time we talked about not needing the boat, which I know I've been vocal on for the last couple of years. I think that's all my discussion right now. Thank you.
Do you want to make a motion to delete or add or change something in the plan?
You know, I don't really know what that would mean. So like, I don't
Okay,
want to take something off. I know I've looked at some possible ways to save money and hold things off like carpet, furniture, like these things aren't a priority to me for the city. Anything we could do to try to save money. So I don't know, you know, I don't think we remove those, do we? Or do we just move them further?
well, for the purposes of discussion, so we can stay focused on one thing. If you want to change something, make a motion to do whatever you want to do. You want to move it, delete it, change it, and then we can discuss it and move on. And we vote on it either up or down and move to the next one.
I don't think it's necessary at this time because later you said we could always amend and change, right?
Yes, but this is going to drive the budget that we're working on, so just. keep it-
Oh, all right, then let's remove City Hall renovations, 2019 B2 Tiny B, and City Hall renovations, 2018 B24. Please,
Are you making a motion to do that?
that would be a motion.
So your motion is to remove 2019 B2 little b
Yep,
and 2019 B24,
2018 B24.
2018 B24. And you want to treat both of those with one motion?
I feel like that makes sense because it's City Hall renovations under building, or do they both need to be separate?
It's whatever you want to do. You just tell me
Well,
what
I don't know the rules, so I need your
I'm
assistance.
telling you the rules. You make the motion, someone
All
has, and then we'll discuss it.
I would like to make a motion to remove CIP City Hall renovations carpet 2019 B2 Tiny B. That is the end of this motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Vogel, seconded by Schaefer to remove project 2019 B2B, which is building City Hall renovations, phase 1 and carpet replacement at City Hall. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to clarify what page you're on. I'm just trying to.
It's in the
cycle through.
building, it's in the building property and equipment section of the CIP, which is the last section. And it's in the top part. It's in the 2021, 2022 budget section. It's in the bottom half of that blue section. Blue or
For
purple.
$150,000.
it's page 44 of the narrative, if you're looking at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
can I speak to why these items were identified as a priority by staff?
Yes, please.
So when we talk about, I believe we're looking at 2018 B24, which is rental space furniture replacement. We can definitely push that off for a period of time. However, I want to make it clear that,
We're just talking about B2B, which is just City Hall.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought they were combined.
No, she needs-
No, I went separate. Sorry,
Okay,
I did.
Okay. So 2019 B2B, City Hall renovations, phase 1 and carpet replacement. So this was identified prior to COVID as a need to reconfigure the first floor to allow for some challenges we're having as we've grown into the building. We believe we're at a staffing level we're going to maintain, but we have moved the clerk to a different location. We've moved the police around a little bit, and we've had some challenges with where the interview rooms are located, as well as how customer service handles people coming into the building. We have 2 staff there now who deal with confidential information, and they're not able to have someone come to the counter and have someone else come to the other space and work on a confidential discussion at the same time. So the main focus of the reconfiguration of the first floor, this would not include the entire first floor. It was to ensure that we could have separate spaces for customer service. We could have a meeting space that can be used by multiple departments where someone can meet privately, whether it's the clerk dealing with someone purchasing a cemetery plot or someone who needs to talk to the police outside of the lobby so that they can go into a private location that multiple departments could use. That's the primary focus of this. It can be delayed. COVID has presented challenges in that right now we will have to separate staff. They cannot be in their normal locations. And so we actually will, when we have our customer service staff coming back, one will likely have to be located in a conference room because of our current configuration. So that was why this became a higher priority instead of being pushed off from COVID, because we needed to make some adjustments related to that. But we can delay it. I would just request that it not be taken off the CIP because this is something we need to address.
Thank you, City Manager Stewart. That was my thing. Like, I don't want things removed and abolished from the CIP just down the road. This just isn't a priority right now because of COVID. And so that's why I would like to not have this under 2021-2022 budget year.
Well, the way the CIP works, the only stuff that really matters is in the current year. So by removing it, all that is saying, especially since you're removing something from the current year, that just removes it from the current year. And when the staff proposes the CIP update for next year, the staff could very easily put it back in at another year, maybe even next year, as a proposal. That can happen. My personal feeling, unless the city manager disagrees, is it's better to remove it and then let her and her staff decide if it comes back and where to put it than for us to try to guess where to move it to. But I can go either way on that. But right now, the motion to remove doesn't make it disappear forever. It simply makes it disappear for this year's CIP.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
Actually, for the city manager, did staff consider moving it from this year?
We did. We evaluated it. It was going to be a lower priority because of COVID, but we have some specific challenges that we have to address. For example, our HR director and city clerk does not have a private office. So when she's had to have a lot of personal conversations, especially related to COVID and medical conditions that you can hear outside of her office. We've had some challenges with the interview room as well. And so customer service, the clerk's office, and the interview room would have been the priority in this phase, would be addressing those immediate needs. But we understand that COVID does impact financially and things like that, but we felt it was still a priority. And in fact, COVID actually made it a higher priority.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Councilmember
My
Clark.
question is that the clerk at one time, when our original configuration, the clerk had her own office. And you decided to give that to the police department for somebody, and we only have, by what I read here, you only have one administrative person in the police department, but you've got that whole row of office space back behind on the west side, leading up to the office that used to be the detective's office. And then there was the interview rooms, and then there was the office at the end, which originally was the reception area for the police. If you had a police department issue, you would go there. So I guess I'm having a hard time figuring out, now you've got to move people around again when we had it set up to where the clerk had her own office and it was a private office, and there's plenty more space back in the back for the police department. I guess I don't see where we need to reconfigure a whole lot more.
Yeah, let me address some of the things that you brought up, and I'll try to hit them all. So the relocation of the clerk's office was very purposeful when we hired Clerk Jarvis, one, because she's also dealing with HR items as well. So those were combined into one location. And she also oversaw the customer service desk. Previously, you may remember, we had actually four separate desks available to the public. We condensed them into one, 2 customer service associates, and we needed a larger space for that than the clerk's area. And so that only allowed for one person to sit there, and it wasn't even at a desk. So we relocated that to the customer service area, reconfigured it, moved the clerk there, and combined all the HR documents and things in that region. The police department now is in the old clerk's office, has 2 sergeants and the administrative support. That area is completely secure due to lean access and some other specialized items to ensure that any of those files are really separated from everyone else. That was something that was discovered in the audit, that we really needed to create more separation. That space allowed for it. And so then what we have now is we have a little bit of mixture of police and clerks throughout the rest of the first floor. And we do have often interns from the police department that take up some of those cubbies, as well as the administrative assistant. And then we also have a detective in that area. Our goal is to get all of them separated, but honestly, the highest priority is ensuring we have a place where the public can come in and meet and have a private discussion. We do not have that availability right now. We can do it in a conference room and things like that, but if an employee has a health concern or wants to talk about FMLA or wants to purchase a cemetery lot, someone comes in with a family group, what we're looking for is a meeting room that could meet that, as well as the police that would be in the middle of them. And then also making sure that the clerk's area is secure and that you cannot hear outside of it. We did reconfigure, and yes, she would have had a secure office if we kept her in the other location, but she's supervising people that are at the customer service desk. And she is backup for them if they need support.
Okay, all that said, and any of my comments, I don't mean disrespectfully, and I hope you understand that.
Of
But
course.
we have this huge building that we built that we couldn't occupy. We didn't have room, and now we gave it away to somebody else, and now we don't have room for our own people. So to me, it's kind of
I think it's less about not having room. It's about making more efficient space is our focus. And making sure that we can, when we have 2 customer service people at the window, that 2 people can be served and feel comfortable with that. We can't really do that in the current structure.
And I guess I just would note, and I know Leon wasn't on council at the time, but this discussion about this, they're calling it phase 1, but this is really phase 2 of City Hall remodel, because the remodel for the school system was phase 1, and it was fully anticipated that we would be doing a remodel or multiple remodels of the City Hall. One would be the downstairs area by the police and where the customer service is, and the other would be the finance department and development area. So this is not new. This has been, what's new is that the conditions have changed and the situations have changed, and what was perceived as being sufficient a few years ago is not now, at least as I understand it. So it really comes down to, do we need to do this at all? And then if we need to do it at all, do we need to do it now? And if we need to do it now, can we afford to do it? So I'm not hearing the manager say that we can't afford to do it. I'm hearing her say that it became a higher priority this year because of COVID. But I would like to make sure that whatever is done in phase 1, that there's a full-blown plan that makes sure that it dovetails really well with whatever phase 2, 3, 4, whatever that is going down the road. That we know what that is, but I guess that's where I'm at. I don't hear you saying, city manager, that we can't afford this year. And I guess Councilmember Vogel, you're concerned that we might have an issue in that area.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about proposed millage rate increases, I think, and the impacts of COVID, I think it points in the direction that we cannot afford it at this time. And so we need to shift things around accordingly to not further burden our community. So City Hall renovations and Sarah using the conference room as she has been doing, I think waiting off a year and having to hold out isn't really that big of an ask. when so many of us have to make other decisions. And that's just one idea. Yeah, I'm just trying to not have to even ask the community to potentially vote for a millage increase. So yeah, I just think we're overspending and it's not sustainable. And I've been concerned for a couple budget meetings. I've been vocal about it. I was upset to see. I don't know, it's $150,000. Can we hold off a year? I think we can.
Any,
So,
any other discussion on the motion to remove 219 B2B? All right, hearing no discussion, can we have the roll call on the motion to amend the CIP?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Josha,
No,
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
yes,
Councilmember Brown,
No.
Mayor Whipple.
No. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Vogel.
motion to move furniture from City Hall renovations, item 2018 B24 off the CIP.
Is there a second? Moved by Vogel, second by Clark to remove item 2018 B24 from the CIP. Is there any?
Same discussion, same idea, same thought.
Any-
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
just want to give context of why this was identified as a priority. We have, prior to COVID, had a continual increase of rentals and our furniture was showing it. A lot of the seats were coming actually off the chairs and they were stained and we were getting complaints from people who were renting the facility. So we started a replacement schedule using, starting in some of our smaller locations and using the best furniture to locate down. Right now, we are not renting the facility. I don't think we will be renting it anytime soon. But if the council wants us to begin renting it again, we would need to make this improvement. So that is, but from a priority perspective, if the council doesn't anticipate us renting the facility or pushing that to happen sooner than later, then I think we're fine with pushing that off a year.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
are we still renting that to residents for $100?
I do not know the amount. Sarah, do you know off the top of your head?
Believe it is still $100.
So we buy $50,000 worth of furniture and rent for $100. There's something doesn't match up there. When the next nearest facility for rent in the city is the community building down at the fairgrounds that costs, well, before COVID was $1,000 for a Saturday. I don't know if we're, I can see giving residents a break, absolutely, but funding, like I said, $50,000 worth of furniture for a $100 rental, something seems out of whack to me.
I believe it's only $5,000, correct?
It is 5,000, and keep in mind, I believe this is the first major furniture replacement since the building was put in place.
yes.
Sorry, I looked at the wrong line.
It
But
all
I-
adds up.
But my understanding when I came in, the rental rates were based off of providing it as a resource to the community. If you want it to be something that covers expenses, that would be a completely different structure that we can look at from a staff view.
Well, I don't think it necessarily needs to cover the 100% of the expenses, but we should get something a little bit more for it. I mean, $100 is a giveaway. There's got to be somewhere between a huge cost.
Well, looking at our lost revenue chart just quickly, it's on a normal year, we're around 6,000 or 7,000 in rental fees.
Any other discussion on the motion to delete 2018 B24?
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Just a question for the city manager. I know you said it was, council's prerogative as to when to start renting the room again. Just based on the current usage of City Hall and your understanding of what the staffing and the needs in that building are this year, what would be your best estimate as to reasonable rental of that space?
I can tell you, and
in terms of the timeline.
Yeah, I want to be clear, and maybe I said that too much off the cuff, in that we have MIOSHA requirements that if we are going to rent the facility, we have to meet certain requirements. That would likely require us to have staff here, which would likely be overtime staff, which would in itself increase our rates. And so we have to manage, we have to ensure everyone's wearing a mask. We have to ensure that they're not sharing food and things like that in our facility, or we become a different level of facility. So there's certain obligations we have regarding rentals. Those may loosen up. We don't know when, but I would expect that majority of the summer we will not be able to rent. And when we do, we would likely have to do an analysis of what it's going to cost us to maintain, because we have to, if you're familiar at all with rental previously, it was pretty hands-off. We allowed someone to come in, rent, clean up after themselves. The next person came in and rent. We would likely not be able to do that anymore. We would have to clean in between rentals, all of those things, and make sure. And so that's going to require staff to be in on the weekend that they hadn't previously had to do.
Well, you bring up a good point though, Deb, is that we're pretty much hands off, but we're talking $5,000 right now for chairs and furniture, which is one thing. But then if you lump in the dings and dangs and the walls and the paint
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff too, now you're talking, we're not talking just furniture.
No, we are not covering our costs.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion to remove item 2018 B24? Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
No.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. So that item will be removed probably to surface in a future year. Is there any?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I have another motion.
Go ahead.
Motor vehicle pool. All 4 cars. Do I need to go through and say the project number?
Which ones?
2017 MVP 22, 23, and 27, and 2018 MVP 24.
You can make that all at one motion. Is that what you're saying? You want to remove all 4?
Yes. Yep.
Is there a second? Schaefer, you seconding?
Second.
Yeah. Yes.
Moved by Vogel and second by Schaefer to remove the 4 vehicles slated in the CIP for the 2021-2022 year, which is 2017 MVP 22, 23, and 27, and 2018 MVP 24. 2 are police vehicles, 2 are DPW vehicles. Is there any discussion?
So my thought on that was maybe we don't need to spend so much on the police vehicles, and we can get a different car moving forward to save more money. And I understand the presentation, Deb, from why we needed the larger vehicles. And so with the context out, maybe for Leon, you could go through that again. I'm just trying to find different ways to save.
May I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Vogel, can I add on one to your motion? Is that possible?
Well, we're kind of past that now. We can do another motion after this one, Jerry.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
my thought about this is that, I know that the price of vehicles has increased and it's going to continue to increase. But when we jump from, and Chief Hanson's on, so he can chime in and let me know for sure, but I'm remembering 28, 27, 28, 29,000 to $43,000 for a four-wheel drive vehicle, and we need a whole fleet of them. I think that the state bid allows us to get any vehicle that we really want. So I would just encourage them to go back and take a look and see if we couldn't find something that's functional, that's less than $43,000. That's a lot of money.
Any other discussion? I had just one question. What are the DPW vehicles? Are those both pickup trucks? Or is one something else?
One is
Oh.
a pickup truck and the other one is an asphalt roller and trailer.
Oh,
The 18,024, I think, is the pickup truck.
And then the other one's an asphalt roller and a trailer. It's my understanding that the way the motor vehicle pool works is we put together a schedule to replace this stuff on a periodic basis based on its condition, but also based on kind of a guesstimate of its useful life, and also the balance of the cost to continue to maintain an older piece of equipment versus a newer piece of equipment. I'm curious, Deb, on these particular vehicles, I'm assuming 83 and 86, those are both just police responding cars or vehicles.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, we went through this replacement because our current vehicles were discontinued. So we had to consider other vehicles. There are only 3 available that are equipped for police, and that is a Charger, a Mustang, or an Explorer. We felt that a Charger was not appropriate for a small town policing. In fact, we heard quite a bit of feedback from other communities that had Chargers and regretted having Chargers. And Explorers allowed us for more flexibility with space and equipment. And when we looked at the Mustangs, they were comparable in price. And so we did evaluate, these were the vehicles that are available, and the Explorer was the best fit. All costs of vehicles are increasing. And that's just the reality of the market today.
And that $48,000 for the police vehicles, does that include everything, lights, siren, computer hookup and all that, or is that in addition to that?
I am not sure. I don't know, Michelle. I know you're on. Do you know if that number includes equipping, or is that a separate line item?
It usually includes everything.
Oh, no. Mm.
Any other discussion on the motion to remove the 4 vehicles?
Well, the only
I'm
thing
not-
I'd say
I
about
don't
the-
remember.
Councilmember Schaefer,
well, as far as equipping vehicles, if I remember correctly, that we're buying a $49,000 Ford Explorer for the dog handler. And that does not include labels on the side of the doors, the radios, or the equipment to secure the dog. So
The equipping of the K9, the specific equipping related to the K9 is separate and funded through that donation. But when we're talking about police vehicle equipping, we're talking about the radios, the lights, all those things that have to be part of that function.
So that price is completely everything they need.
I would have to confirm it. I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
is it typical that we would replace 2 police vehicles in the same year?
It is not. It's just the way our schedule has worked out. We do have to replace, there's 1 year where we always replace 2. This happens to be the year that we replace 2.
And what's the useful life of these vehicles?
4.
4 years.
4 years?
You got to remember these vehicles are being driven constantly. I know it sounds like a short period of time, but when you start to get into maintenance costs, when we've kept vehicles longer than that, they end up being out of the fleet more than they're being used.
I mean, it's kind of hard because like we had COVID last year. So our patrol cars weren't really out unless there was an emergency. I mean, so last year really kind of changes the data versus what was a normal running year for our patrol officers. I'm just trying to save any money, and if these only last for 4 years, so somebody's gonna drive around in a Dodger, how embarrassing. I mean, I don't, I don't know. This is what it's about, right? We all had to do some belt tightening. And I'm just going through the list.
Well, I believe the Dodge is what the police, state police use.
In the county.
And yeah, in the county.
I remember the meeting. I think it was like a difference of $5,000. The Explorer was $5,000 more. We could have that rationale back, a couple of years ago when we had the presentation about, the police officer literally got into the vehicle and Deb took a picture to show like how cumbersome it was and then like how roomy it was. And that's really their office and they spend a lot of time there. And I get that. But just respecting the tax dollars of everybody. So somebody's gonna have to drive a Charger and not have so much space for 4 years. I really don't know that is too much to ask.
Just remember that you're also transporting public in these vehicles. That is part of their job. And I would debate, our police officers have been very active over the last year. And so they have been on the roads consistently. They have not been not patrolling. In fact, their jobs has been consistently using all of their hours more than any other area of the city.
I'm just going off the report when COVID started March last year and how the city manager's report through the spring last year was that we weren't having police officers out there because we wanted to keep them safe. This doesn't matter. I just want to save some money. And so I think we need to relook at the vehicles. Do we really need them? Can we push one of them off? Is there wiggle room? It's a lot of money.
One thing I do want to address is Councilmember Vogel, you've mentioned it several times, and I guess maybe I'm missing something, but we're not in dire financial straits. I don't understand your contention that there's a tax increase coming. There's no proposal in the current budget proposal that we haven't talked about yet, but we've all read it to increase taxes this year. So I appreciate the debate on whether we need to buy something or not. But I think it's a little bit misleading to make it sound like the city's in some sort of dire financial situation and that we have to cut to the bone in certain things. So
that's why I wasn't sure that this was necessary because we haven't had the budget presentation yet.
Well, we have to
where she's proposing that we raise 1 or 2.
But she's not. That's the whole point. There's no proposal in the budget as written to raise millage for 21-22. So
the only reference made in the budget proposal for millage increases for parks.
That's right. So I guess what my question, Deb, is, and I hadn't picked this up until just now, is you've got 83 and 86 slated for replacement in 21-22, and then 86 is slated to be replaced again in 24, which is only 3 years, and 83 is set for 25. Is that just somebody just didn't make an update or something? Because they're together this year, but in 3 years they get separated.
We are trying to even out our motor vehicle pool a little bit, and you start to see that we have some large expenses as we go out. So we're trying to spread them out a little bit so that we're not hitting together. We're actually going through that exercise in all of our equipment, including fire and things like that, trying to spread them out so they're not hitting so close together. We can get some value out of them, but that is something we can evaluate at the time. I did get confirmation that the number does include equipping, so that is an all-in cost for those vehicles. And I would just really caution you to get off of regular replacement schedules. When I came on, that was the biggest hurdle I had when I came here, was to try to get us on a regular replacement schedule because we were spending so much in maintenance. And getting us back on a regular equipment schedule really allows us to save money in the long term. I know these are expenses, but again, I don't agree that we are in a situation financially where this would be something that would not be a priority.
How many, I'm trying to remember, what do we have? 8 police vehicles?
We have 4 patrol cars, patrol vehicles, and then we have the detective car and an admin car.
And the chief's car.
That's one of the, he uses that admin car.
Okay, so we only have 5,
6.
6? I know it's very rare that you have all 6 of them on the road at the same time. Most generally, we'll have 1, maybe 2 officers on a shift. So there may be 2 on the road at any given time.
Well, during the day, we have our detective here, we have our chief here, we have sergeants here as well as officers.
How old is 83 and 86 right now?
I do not know, but I can find out.
Do we currently have a detective on staff?
Yes.
Oh,
Uh-oh,
The mayor disappeared.
the mayor's camera's gone bonkers on him.
magic. Hey, Mr. Mayor,
Keep disappearing. Yes, ma'am.
could I amend my motion to split the police cars separate from the truck and the roller?
That would be another motion that would be considered and voted on by the council.
I'm just wondering, just in a little bit, maybe that would be better. So then we just focus on the police and I just wondered. Thank you. Wherever you are, your
Well, we can't
invisibility cloak.
I'm coming
By
back.
our rules, we can't proceed because the mayor's got no video. There he is.
And it's
Almost.
like a gift from the heavens.
I don't know what's going on, guys, but the
There
camera
you are,
is
Mr. Mayor.
acting normal. Anyway, go ahead.
Me,
You look like an angel.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I'd like to make a motion to split Councilpersons Vogel's motion and eliminate the pickup truck and the asphalt roller and keep the 2 police vehicles.
Second. To amend my previous motion.
So the motion is to amend to remove the police vehicles from the original motion to amend. And only to,
Remove the roller and the pickup truck, keep the police vehicles.
okay, so we'd still be considering deletion of the police vehicles.
Yes,
So it's been moved and seconded to amend the motion, to amend the CIP, to remove items MVP 23 and MVP 24 from the motion. Is there any discussion? Do we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Ferris,
I want to keep everything. Which way is that? Yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Yes, thank you.
are you sure about that?
I don't think that's,
I don't
Well,
think
yes,
that's correct.
Yes removes 2 vehicles from the motion. So
yes.
that's
all we're voting on.
considered-
No, okay, no, I do not wish to remove 2 vehicles from, I do not wish to remove any vehicles whatsoever.
Okay, let me explain again.
Thank you.
The current motion would remove 2 vehicles from Rita's original motion to remove 4 vehicles.
Uh-huh.
So if this amendment passes, now we're
Okay.
talking about only 2. So you want to vote yes if you want to keep something.
Yes,
Okay.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes,
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No,
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. If I recall, was that 6-1 or 5-2?
take one.
That is 6-1.
Okay. Trying to make notes, keep myself straight here. So we just removed items MVP 23 and 24 from the original motion to amend.
And
And that,
Deb, we're waiting for
and that passed-
our,
and that passed- just a- that passed 6-1, and the no vote was who? Brown?
Correct.
Okay. So now we have the motion to amend, which would be eliminating vehicles 22 and 27, which are police vehicles, number 83 and 86. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I did get an update. 86 was purchased in 2015 and 83 was purchased in 2016. And I just, Mr. Mayor, I would also encourage the council to look at the budget breakdown for motor vehicle pool. As you look out at the next couple of years, there is no year where it's an easy add to add police vehicles in. We have 2 large equipment purchases in next year. The following year, we're doing the second half of one of our large purchases. And then we start to get off schedule where we're going to be pushing vehicles out much longer than their lifespan.
I personally don't want to eliminate the police vehicles. I do think it would have been better to have 83 be a year after 86, since it's a year newer. And I am concerned that 86 is then going to be replaced again in only 3 years, actually 2 years. And 83 in 3 years, 4 years. I got to get my numbers right. 3 years and 4 years. So I think that those future years need to be looked at. I mean, 3 and 4 years is, in my mind, way too short to, I think you should be able to get 5 years out of these vehicles, but I'm going to defer to the people who manage the motor vehicle pool. If they think 4 is the number, then 4 is the number. But 2 and 3 seems like it's insufficient, but that's not what we're talking about here. I think if you've got a 5 and a 6-year-old vehicle, that they're probably due to be replaced. So I personally think we don't remove these vehicles, but that's just me.
I will note, Mr. Mayor, that we did get confirmation from our staff that 86, for example, is over 120,000 miles and is having considerable maintenance issues because it's being run so consistently. So these vehicles are run more than any other vehicle nonstop. And when something is out of for maintenance, that means that the other vehicles get more wear, which makes their life shorter.
Any other discussion on the motion, the now amended motion to remove vehicles, the police vehicles 83 and 86, which are project numbers MVP 22 and 27? So could we have the roll call? And this will be a vote to remove, yes, would be to remove the 2 police vehicles from the CIP. So could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Schaefer,
no, excuse me, no,
Councilmember Vogel,
oh, the pressure. Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No.
Councilmember Clark,
No,
Councilmember Josha,
Oh,
Councilmember Ferris,
no,
Mayor Whipple.
No. So I hear it failed 1-6. Is there any other
Mr. Mayor?
discussion? Yes, Councilmember Clark.
just so it's understood is that I was not opposed to, I didn't want to screw up the schedule by removing the vehicles, but what I am concerned with is that we're getting $43,000 vehicles. I think we can do better, and I would encourage the staff to go out and take a look. There's new stuff coming out all the time. I know that there's new police vehicles being made in Australia that are specially built police cars that are coming to the United States, then being refurbished and put back out as new. So I think there's a lot of other programs that we can look at. And I wanted to go back to your comment too, Mr. Mayor, about the city not being in bad financial straits. And I agree with that, but our job and our responsibility is to make sure that we don't go there.
And my only point, I don't disagree with you at all. My only point was that I didn't think that was a accurate argument to use in saying we needed to cut this money, was that we were in trouble. We should cut money wherever we don't need it. Wherever we don't need to
Well-
spend it, it should be cut. So I agree.
And I think that's what Councilmember Vogel is saying all along, not that we're in bad shape, but that we should really be as fiscally responsible as we possibly can. And I know that's my job, and I've talked to Deb about it and told her, I gave her forewarning. So don't take this stuff personally, because I'm trying to get the most bang for the buck I can for the people I represent.
And I would anticipate that we're gonna get, the next time police cars are purchased, a full description of options. Is there any other discussion on the CIP as amended?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just, I guess, have a question about the new item, which is project number 2021-P2. It is on page 31 of the CIP, 51 of the packet. I saw this on here. First, I was glad to see it incorporated into the CIP. My question, before any motions are offered, is whether there is wisdom to moving this up to fiscal year 21-22, considering the fact that there is ongoing work on that bridge at present. And so I realize we'd be, front loading the expense. I'm just wondering if we're missing the opportunity, or do we have to sequence it so that MDOT finishes the bridge first and then we actually come behind with the intended improvements?
I guess I'm confused because the southeast quadrant would not be the Columbia Road Bridge.
Yeah.
That's the west side of the city.
So I'm looking Columbia Street Bridge projected walkway construction, and I think there's a different number on the spreadsheet than there is in the narrative. So I was referencing the narrative.
So the narrative is 2021 P2.
Correct.
I don't see it.
It's
I
highlighted in
I
yellow.
thought it was I thought it was contingent, Marlon, on doing what they're doing now, and then we could get in there. But yeah, some of the numbers don't match up. But I'm with you on the new highlighted area. Great question.
I don't see a 2021 P2 in the narrative at all.
Neither do I.
It's highlighted.
It's
Right,
highlighted.
yeah.
Okay, so
Where?
that's a different item than you're talking about. That would be 2021.
2021 P2, Columbia Street Protected Walkway Construction. I've got it. I don't know.
I've got that, but where is it listed in the chart, Deb?
It is in year 2 of parks, cemetery, and non-motorized. So it should be in the most updated one. It should be highlighted right before. At least it is on mine. I want to make sure you guys have the right version. There should be.
It's 2021, it's 2020 P1 in the chart,
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
2021 P2 in the narrative.
Yeah, so the narrative is accurate. The chart should say 2021 P1.
P2.
And it's proposed for year 22, 23. So Marlon's asking, should we move it up to 21, 22?
Well, I was just asking for the city manager, the rationale there before we consider whether it should be moved.
So right now, the key is that we have to get MDOT sign off on the actual pedestrian crossing. So we have meetings set up with them. We have design work that has been, kind of that we're proposing, approvals and permitting and things like that. It's going to take the time that's likely going to be, but if we were for some reason able to get approval sooner, we can always bring that forward to the council with the intention of moving forward sooner. We just thought it's most likely that it's going to fall into that year.
I still don't see it.
And so I guess my only other question would be, is there any wisdom to moving it up in the capital improvements plan for planning purposes, but not actually allocating funding until such time becomes necessary?
it's definitely an option. It doesn't hurt anything. I think realistically with capacity, it's probably not going to be until that following year.
Okay.
So
Mayor?
just a second, Councilmember Clark. So the budget book narrative for the CIP does not match the packet. That's, I think, part of the problem, because 2021 P2 is not in the budget book,
No,
at least that I can find anywhere. It's not in here. It's not the highlighted. You got it nice and bright highlighted yellow in the packet, but it's not in the budget book.
That's an error that I'm just realizing now. The Planning Commission one had a highlighted version that had that project added. And it didn't make it, it sounds like that was the only change from the Planning Commission from the workshop. I'm happy I can share my screen and I can pull it up, whatever would, but it is related to the actual implementation of the design approach to the Columbia Street Bridge.
Right, so Mayor Pro Tem Brown, are you interested in making a motion, or do you have an answer to your question?
You know, since we're playing with the motions here, I'll go ahead and make the motion. I would like to see it in this year, even if we don't budget for it. So as a result, I would move that, let me get the correct number because it's in the narrative. That project number 2021-P2 be moved up to fiscal year 2021-22.
Second.
I have a question, Mayor Pro Tem Brown. Are we
Just a
talking about?
second, Councilmember Schaefer, just a second here, okay? Just give me a minute here. I want to make sure I got this down. So it's been moved and seconded to move project 2021 P2, which is Columbia Street Bridge Protected Walkway Construction, to budget year 21-22. Did you have something you wanted to say, Councilmember Schaefer?
We're just talking about the planning for the crosswalk. We're not talking about the actual construction of it at this time.
Well, I believe this talks about constructing the sidewalk connections from existing sidewalks up to the bridge.
So we're gonna move the money and everything right up till this year. I don't even know how much it costs. It's not in my book.
It's $115,000. It's in the packet. If you got the online packet, it's in there.
I don't do online now. So 115,000 you're talking about moving into this year, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
115 or 150?
it's 115, 115.
115. The time to be alive. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, 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 you may.
Thanks. You know, I appreciate just us entertaining the discussion on this item. I guess my thinking, and certainly we still have more to do with the actual budget this year, but I certainly would like to signal the intent if it is possible to begin work on this project, to do it during this coming fiscal year. I would support moving it in the CIP, but not actually including it until the budget, until it's shovel ready. And that at that point, we could do a budget amendment.
And that's an interesting idea. I guess I would ask our city manager, is that how she wants the CIP to be managed? I don't like that idea necessarily, but I could be convinced.
I mean, I would prefer that our CIP led into our budget and that it lined up in that way. I would just suggest to Mayor Pro Tem Brown is that this project would not be bid in this year, no matter what, this construction season. And so the soonest it would be done is spring of next year. And when you start to talk about the end of the fiscal year, if we have a project that we have bid out and we're able to start construction like street construction, we are able to move those forward with the budget amendment. So I would just express that I think it probably would be easiest to keep it in the current fiscal year, but we will have every intention that if we can move it forward into next spring with the bidding of the other projects, we will do that. So it's not a following year project. All of our street projects are bid for the next fiscal year or lined up for the next fiscal year, but we still bid them and start them in spring if that helps, because construction just, we need the time of the whole summer.
Yeah, it's exactly the inverse. So instead of moving it up in the CIP, there's the acknowledgement that we could potentially fund it in the coming year if the construction timeline is that. So
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that approach.
Any other discussion on the motion to amend?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
my question to Mayor Pro Tem is, what is, I guess I'm having a hard time visualizing what it is that you're gonna have as a final outcome here.
With the project or with the motion? I mean,
With the project.
so with the existing bridge, there are no sidewalk connections to the existing path that pedestrians are using to cross 127 on that. And so the use currently will be to extend sidewalks on both sides of the bridge to that existing path. And I think the secondary measure would to be make the path a little bit more safe. Currently, I mean, well, I can't say currently because, you know, the bridge is under construction, but prior to the current construction of the bridge, you have a sidewalk that ends and then people are walking along the street to cross the bridge. When you get to the actual overpass itself, there's a little bit of a shoulder that allows pedestrians to cross without impeding traffic. But I think the long-term goal is to not only extend sidewalks to that shoulder, but to also make that shoulder a little bit safer to cross.
When we redid Columbia, how far, I thought that we ran sidewalk on the south side up to the bridge. Did we not? I know it's in front of Hugh Leach's place.
That's where it ends.
He's on the corner. And then is that where it stops? Is right on that corner of,
Yes.
okay. So you're just talking about putting in a section of sidewalk from that point to the bridge on both sides of the street?
Correct.
Because there's not gonna be, in my opinion anyway, there's not gonna be even that little bit of shoulder. If I would be really hesitant to encourage people to walk across that bridge, even with that little bit of shoulder, because it's not a pedestrian walkway. That bridge was not designed to have a pedestrian crosswalk. We talked about that with MDOT when that bridge was redone, and the price was so astronomical. That's why it didn't get done then. So, you know, I kind of have mixed emotions about this project from the standpoint that I want to have everybody be connected, but I don't want to encourage people to walk into an area where I think that they're going to be at risk, especially kids from that area, because most kids are small, and so that's my quandary with it.
And I certainly respect that, Councilmember Clark, and I think that's the conundrum, is that, you know, regardless of whether or not we designate a path, there still is pedestrian traffic on that bridge. So I guess the question is, does creating a path encourage it, or does not creating a path just leave pedestrians more exposed? So, but that being said, I would encourage voting no on the motion, because I'm pleased with the city manager's recommendation that we would, you know, potentially look at this in the spring of next year if available. Otherwise, we would pursue it in the following year.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Vogel,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No?
Councilmember Clark,
No,
Councilmember Josha,
No,
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer,
No.
Mayor Whipple.
No. The motion fails 0-7. Is there any other discussion on the CIP under resolution 2021-06?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I've got to find it. But I would like to make a motion to move that, and I don't have the project number here. I'm not flipping back and forth through all these pages and stuff to find it. The Maple Street Bridge, Maple Street and the Maple Street Bridge, I think it's like set up for 25, 26, something like that.
Yes, 27,
2017 S16.
yes.
It's set up for 25, 26, and I think that we need to move that up as get it done as quickly as we can. If any of you have been by that bridge, and in their own narrative, it says that the concrete head walls have severe spalling and are in need of repair, replacement, and handrails on the bridge are not safe. So why would we take a project that's by our own admission not safe and push it out 4 years? And when you walk by that, there's very little concrete left holding that handrail in at all.
Are you making a
And then-
motion to move it?
Yes,
To where?
move it sooner.
To
I
when?
know you can't get it this year. Is that right, Deb?
That's right.
Can't do it this year. So we'll do it in the next budget cycle.
So do you want to move it to 2022, 23? That's your motion.
Yes.
That's an expensive year.
Well, we may have to adjust, but I think that we got to prioritize. Like I said, I think for me, I wouldn't even put this narrative out there that it's unsafe and then let it sit for 4 years. If somebody gets hurt or falls off that thing and dies, then we've already admitted that it's not safe.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to amend the CIP by moving project 2017 S16, which is the Maple Street Bridge repairs and replacement from fiscal year 2025-26 to 2022-23. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Drosha.
Question for Councilmember Clark. What would you take out of 22-23 to replace the money? Or it's how do we afford it?
Well, I think that, I'd have to go back and I probably should have done that and apologize for not doing it, but I could have prioritized and taken a look at what was on the list for that particular year and moved it down. Because I'm sure that there's some projects on that year that aren't quite where the streets aren't, or the bridges aren't quite as bad a shape as that one. And I don't think anybody could argue that.
Well, hey,
Yes, Leanne?
Leon,
I'm sorry.
for the 22-23, for the next 4, 1, 2, 3, for the 3 years following, we're roughly about 860,000 as is. This budget year, we're just over $1 million. And so we're, about 860 for the next 3 years after that. And just next year, there's only 2 projects. So it's South Barnes to Ash to Kip, which is 750,000, and 100,000 on East Cherry and Rogers.
So it's your intent, Councilmember Clark, you wouldn't move anything. You just add this to 22-23.
Well, I could certainly defer to the wisdom of the administration if they thought that there was something they could realistically move. I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. I'm just saying that to me, that particular bridge is in such bad shape that I don't think that we should be sitting on it for another 3 or 4 years before we start working on it. And if you wanted to swap it with Barn Street, I wouldn't have a problem with that either, because Barn Street it's probably one of the newer rebuilds that we've had on the list.
Mr. Mayor,
Seems that-
Yes, city manager.
can I make a suggestion?
You sure can.
I'm hearing that Councilmember Clark would like us to prioritize the Maple Street Bridge to a sooner year, second or third year. There are some challenges with that. We have to coordinate it with the actual repairs of Maple Street and some other things. And so instead of us trying to do that on the fly, if Councilmember Clark will give us the purview, we'll add it to that year as an amended motion. And then next year we will provide a prioritization based on moving some things around.
Perfect.
So you would just add it to 22-23, and I think that's what he just said, that it's up to you if you want to move something, because it is not this current budget year, it's the next one. Yeah.
I just want to give the the expectation that it may not be possible for next year because we do have to coordinate it with the street bridge. So I mean, the street work on Maple. So we have to figure out how we do that in combination, but I'm hearing that you want to prioritize as soon as possible. And so we will provide a recommendation based on that in the next CIP.
And if that means that we do the whole street and everything all at once like we'd originally planned, then so be it.
Street
Um,
planned for them.
Is that, just for clarification, when we moved the Maple Street for this year, for the street signal, that is happening this budget year, or we moved that somewhere else?
It's not related to this. Let's talk about
Well,
that.
no, I'm just trying, I'm just trying to understand where we are with Maple Street and the street program for this year's budget as it relates to the bridge.
But that's just the signal. It has nothing to do with the road.
Right. I just thought we got rid of it or moved it. I thought we moved it.
So for clarification, the Maple Street signal is related to the Maple Street work that was done this last year. It was supposed to be part of that project, but because of COVID, it was delayed. So the Maple Street signal is separate from the Maple Street work from Park to Lansing, which is planned to be right before we do the work on Maple Street Bridge. And so we have to do some configuring internally, but I think that's something we can easily propose to you either at the next CIP or in a couple months when we can work through our street plan.
I appreciate that. Like I said, to me, it's just when we have infrastructure that's in that bad a shape, I'm just not comfortable. If we can comfortably do it, I would like to just make it a priority.
I would mention one other thing of why we prioritize this. It has a lot to do with underground infrastructure, which were specifically tied to meeting some certain thresholds. And Barnes has a lot of underground infrastructure work that's why it was prioritized into the second year. So there are a lot of other factors other than that go into how we maneuver which streets go where and which improvements go where. But if council as a body agrees that they would like it prioritized, we can reconfigure in that way.
I appreciate that, Deb. And like I said, for me, I understand the infrastructure issues that on Barnes, although if memory serves me, we redid all that when we redid the street. But I think, to me, public safety is got to be a #1 priority.
Well, and again, I don't want to be argumentative, but I don't like that being thrown around that this thing's unsafe. And maybe that was said wrong in the narrative because I've been by that bridge myself. I agree completely. The concrete is falling, but the handrail is still there, just like it's been there for decades. It's the same rail. It's just in spalled concrete. So the staff, if they want to come back and move this, I don't really have a dog in that hunt. But again, I just think we need to be very careful in throwing around the words unsafe when it's in exact same condition that it's been for many, 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 many years. And if it needs to be fixed, it needs to be fixed. But we don't do the Maple Street Lansing to Park until 24, 25. And I can see why you'd want to do the bridge at the same time. So I look forward to hearing the staff tell us how they would make that happen. I also suspect that Barnes Street has a little bit to do with lead water lines because that's an old part of town. There's probably a lot of lead water lines there. So in our 20-year plan to get rid of all the lead water lines, it just complicates things even more. But if we can move it up and get it done, let's do it. Do we need to? So we still have a motion on the floor then to move it to the 22-23 year. Is there any other discussion on that? All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No,
Councilmember Clark,
Yes,
Councilmember Josha,
No,
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes,
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes,
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes,
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. So did I hear 5-2? Correct? 2 noes?
Correct. Yes.
And that was Brown was Drosha and Brown?
Correct.
Any other discussion on the CIP?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we remove 2017B15 off the CIP. That's the boat.
Is there a second?
Second,
Which one was that, Mr. Mayor?
It was 2017 B15, which is the fire department rescue boat and motor.
We removed that last time.
Well, we didn't do it officially.
I thought we made a motion, voted on it.
I don't recall a
I
motion.
think
There was-
we were in a discussion and then we deferred because it got long.
Mr.
if I
Mayor,
remember.
Excuse me.
it was voted on at the last meeting. It's in the minutes.
Oh, it's
Okay.
gone.
In that case, I'd like to change my motion.
Your motion is moot because it's already been done. So did you have another motion you wanted to make?
I just happen to have one. I'd like to remove, I believe it's 2019 MVP 6 and remove it from the CIP.
The 2019 MVP 6.
Yeah.
Which is vehicle. I'm confused. It says DPW, but it's a fire department designator.
Yes, it is.
So before we hear that motion, let's clarify what we're talking about here.
It's $49,000. $51,000, I'm sorry, $51,000 Ford Explorer for the assistant fire chief.
Okay. Delete. That's 2000, where is it? 19 MVP 6, 2019 MVP 6. Deb, is that the 802 command car?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just a mistype that it says DPW and not fire?
Yes, it should say fire.
Okay,
Does that come out of the fire department's equipment fund or does that come out of the general fund?
it comes out of the motor vehicle pool,
But the fire department contributes to the motor vehicle pool.
but not from the replacement fund, from the general fund.
Correct.
Well, I'd like to have that vehicle removed. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second,
It's been moved by Schaefer, second by Vogel, to remove 2019 MVP 6, which is vehicle number 802 from the fire department from the capital improvement plan. It's currently in year 2024-25. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify from Councilmember Schaefer. I mean, you're obviously not moving it up. You're saying that it shouldn't even be in the plan at all, 5, 6, 7
Correct.
years out. Okay,
That's correct. We don't need it.
thank you.
Mr.
And I have a
Mayor,
better idea of where to put that money. That'll come up next.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
the only thing I can say to that is that the way this normally works is that the current vehicle would be retired or sold or whatever, and the chiefs would be handed down and the chief would get a new vehicle. That's the way it normally works.
He just got
And,
one 2 years ago.
Pardon me?
I think he just got one 2 years ago.
I know, but they rotate them out the same way we get our grass rigs. We don't get a brand new grass rig every time we get one. We get a hand-me-down from the DPW. They just pass them
Yeah,
through
but I don't
to make
think
them-
that
to make them last longer.
I don't think the assistant fire chief puts the miles on that a police car does either.
Well, you'd be surprised.
I don't think I
You would
would. be.
absolutely be surprised. When they, in the middle of the night, when they respond from home, they're the first ones on the scene and able to assess and give us information before we get there, is vital information as to how we're supposed to approach, how we're supposed to attack, what kind of hazards we're dealing with. There's a whole
Do we need-
myriad of things that.
Do we need two of
that,
them? I don't think we
Well,
need two of them,
They don't live in the same house.
but they
Well,
go to the same
are-
fire.
Hold
Are
on.
you saying, Leon, that when Carrie got a new one, then the old one is now what Mark is driving?
Yeah,
And so this, as it's written, is saying Mark will get a brand new one this time around instead of the used one from Carrie in 5 years?
well, somebody's gonna have to correct me on that, but normally the way it works is the chief gets the new one and the next one gets handed down. Now, and
I believe-
unless they-
I believe that's not how this is set up. I believe 802 is going to be straight up replaced. Is that correct, City Manager Stewart?
Yes, and just to answer Councilmember Schaefer's question, their lifespan is 10 years versus the 4 years. And they were replaced, so they're replaced on a 5-year schedule where one is replaced every 5 years and they're staggered.
Mhm.
So it is accurate that the chief got a new one a year ago or so, year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Because this
and
is,
correct, that's new.
so this is slated for 2024. Right?
Yes.
So it,
So, yeah.
I guess my question to Councilmember Schaefer,
Mhm.
is then you're suggesting that the assistant chief should not have a city provided vehicle and should just do all of the work that he's asked to do with his personal vehicle. Is that correct?
I never suggested that. I
Okay.
just don't want him to have a $51,000 brand new Explorer.
Then what should he
There
have?
are other vehicles we have in the city that he can use.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would just note that because of the structure, and I'm hearing Councilmember Schaefer say that it's not the vehicle, but I want to be clear that when our command staff responds to a fire, they often address issues before even personnel have to go out. And so oftentimes they're responding to some of those initial calls. They're getting on the scene quickly. They're coming directly from their homes. This isn't something where they're coming into the station and then dispersing or things like that. And so they're responding in the middle of the night from their home, our command vehicles. I think it's really important when we have a paid on call staff, especially one that has the responsibility of an assistant chief, that they're properly equipped. That is why it's the recommendation of the staff to continue to replace that vehicle.
Is Mark currently in Carrie's old one?
I believe,
Is that how we switched it out?
Yes,
but
I
Carrie's,
assume theirs go really fast too, right? Like the police chief's car, like they're made to, there's a reason you're paying that much because they need to be able to fly.
well, again, this vehicle will be fully equipped. It'll have lights and siren and radio if one is installed. And the controllers and all that. And I don't know if there's other equipment involved as well, but, and it's also 4 years out from the current vehicles. So that's why it's 51,000 instead of 48, because it's anticipated it's going to cost more in 4 years than it costs now, or 3 years. Any other discussion? All right, could we have the roll call, please, on deleting the Fire 802 vehicle from the CIP?
Councilmember Clark,
no,
Councilmember Josha,
Nope.
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer,
I made the motion. I'm going to vote yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
No,
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No.
Mayor Whipple.
No.
I have one more motion I'd like to make.
You may go right ahead and do that.
Look at 2020-P6, the Leyland plan. I'd like to remove that until we work out who owns what on that park. I'm not comfortable with spending money on that park since Consumers owns the pavilion and the railroad owns the right of way. and we're left with nothing except an overflow from the river. I think that we ought to get a firm commitment from consumers in the railroad that we can have that property, or stop doing anything at all on that property.
I believe before we entertain a second, I don't know if this will change your mind or not, but all of this item is to propose the plan, and the plan is required by the railroad and consumers before they'll consider entering into an agreement with us. So you can't not do the plan if you want to get consumers and the railroad to sit down and talk about an agreement.
So we're gonna spend the money on a plan. Then all probability, the railroad's gonna want more money, such as they did across the crossing across Jefferson Street that still irks me to no end, why we're paying them to work on their property, but that's another story. So we're gonna spend money on a plan and then potentially have consumers or the railroad shoot it down. How much is that plan gonna cost, Deb?
15.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
15,000.
I just want to emphasize that this has been identified as a priority for the Downtown Development Authority. They are funding this plan. The general fund is not funding it. This is something that the board of the DDA has determined as a priority and has been something that's been on their priority list for many years. And it's important to them that it moves forward so that we can start those discussions with the railroad and consumers to determine what's feasible or not on that location.
Where does the DDA get their money?
So just a minute. I first of all, I apologize. I thought we could.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Schaefer, you've got a motion. Is there a second for his motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to delete item 2020-P6, the Lee Austin Park Improvements Plan and Design from the 2021-22 CIP. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
couple of things. Jerry, number one, the DDA gets their money from, they can capture taxes in the downtown area that the city cannot capture. So that's where they get their funding.
But it's still tax money.
So they capture money from the businesses in the DDA that the city can't capture. And you're concerned about putting a plan together and then not having it go through. I can tell you that this project has been discussed for over 20 years. And prior to now, the railroad and consumers both would not even sit down to talk about it. So the fact that they're saying, if you give us a plan that's workable, we'll agree to it, is a huge step. And so I think that like I said, because it's been talked about for so long and it can become a valuable asset, I think it's worth the risk in this particular case.
Any other discussion?
Yes. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Ferris.
Kiwanis actually built the pavilion. Consumers did not.
But who owns it?
It's actually, I think, on partially consumers' property and partially on city park property.
Mhm.
That's
But who
correct.
owns it?
I just told you. It's split somewhere down some section of it. The city owns part and consumers owns part.
It's really weird because there's also like area from the railroad that goes so many feet out to the, it's really wonky. But Jerry, I like that you're asking because we have so many different park plans and, you know, this is good stuff. Good conversation.
Any other
So
discussion on the motion to delete 2020-P6? Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Joseph,
Nope.
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
no,
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No.
Councilmember Clark,
No,
Mayor Whipple.
No. Motion fails 1-6. Is there any other discussion on the CIP?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Clark.
before I go into making a motion to remove this thing, I understand when we start talking about the library the city administrator has informed me that she was told that she had to come up with a certain amount of this that's not city money. So I want to know, I would like to know how much that is and where we stand, if you've raised what you were asked to raise. And right off the top, I'll tell you my concern. If I look at the CIP and the money that we put out here, I see 2 or 3 phases of this thing, and it adds up to almost $750,000. And that's a lot of money to put into a building that, when I've asked, nobody can tell me what it's been evaluated at, what it's worth, number one. Number two, when I talk to people that, engineers and people that have done work in there in the past, they tell me that we are not addressing any of the critical issues that need to be addressed. The foundation, it probably needs to be raised up off the foundation, a new foundation put under it, number one. And then there's so many problems with the roof and the windows and those kinds of things that I think that by saying we're going to put in a nice kitchen and that kind of stuff, we're just kind of putting lipstick on a pig, if you ask me. But I like to know exactly what it's going to cost us, because like I said, what we have projected is about $750,000.
Actually, it's a lot more than that for all the phases that are planned, but we don't have to use them all. The question of, I guess you asked so many questions, I don't even know what they were. Why don't you make your motion and then we'll discuss that and get it all out.
Okay, and in light of the fact that I know that the Nazarene Church is coming up for sale again, and a few years ago, when this was a hot topic, there was some discussion about looking into the possibility of moving it there. And the Nazarene Church is receptive to that idea. But in the meantime, until that can be all sorted out, I guess the only motion that I can make that makes any kind of sense and makes it easy is to remove 2017 B5 little b.
Support.
That's the library, part one, phase one, part one.
Yep. And I know it's not a popular position, but it's certainly one that needs more discussion, in my opinion, rather than just throwing a bunch of money at a building that, I don't know how much longer it's going to be standing.
It's been moved and seconded to delete item 2017 B5B, which is library improvements, phase one, part one. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
When this first started a few years back, Leon, yeah, I just started off as a historic district commissioner, and I knew we spent tens of thousands on the ramp. We had to get a new heating system. The boiler was old. Like, it was just crazy money. And then we didn't own it. And so Deb was committed to make sure if we spent any money, we would at least change deeds and own it. The foundation, when Councilmember Schaefer and I went on the tour, and that was a thing. And then I remember asking like so many times that our only commitment was, I think, $225,000 for the entire library. And I remember I kept saying entire library, and the rest was going to be fundraised by Friends of the Library or other sources and grant money. And then it was 3 phases. Now I think it's 2 phases with different parts to kind of break up the cost, I think, to sell it and package it differently, but it is expensive. I was someone who is in support of using the Nazarene because it's also revenue. We could rent out a lot of space. There's parking down there. And it does get us away from the foundation and the cracks when we went on the tour. So thanks for bringing this up. It's a lot of money.
City manager,
especially to go with the next phase. And I know we don't have funding set, but it's like, if we're kind of laying the groundwork and doing the children's area and the kitchen, at what point we're paving the road for down the road to spend more money on the other phases and the next story. And
so let's,
I don't know.
let's get the story straight first. City Manager Stewart, would you please describe the general theme of the work that will happen in phase 1, part 1, and then phase 1, part 2, and then phase 2? Please.
Yeah, I'm gonna back up just a little bit further, just so we all have a clear picture of how we got here. In 2019, we did a feasibility study where it was specifically charged to determine whether a new construction would be a better facility or whether we should look at the current facility. It was evaluated and determined that we could reuse the current facility, and there were some renderings developed, and the community was overwhelmingly supportive of rehabbing the existing property. That was brought forward to council, and we talked about kind of prioritizing what are the biggest impacts. When that is where we broke it into 2 phases, which is what Councilmember Vogel is referring to. Phase 1 was addressing all of the needs on the first floor. It was ensuring that it was ADA accessible, that they would be able to reuse that space in a more flexible way. So they could do gatherings, clear the bookshelves, movable bookshelves, and make it an open space, rehab the children's area, reconfigure that, create more security with the circulation desk. When we started to apply for funds, what we discovered was that SHPO may actually fund 2 parts of that phase if we separated the project into 2 parts. They may actually be willing to come in and do an additional grant. No commitments, but they may do another grant, and their grants are up to 100,000. So we split it into 2 parts. So part 1 of phase 1, again, focuses on the first floor. And I actually have a drawing in our budget discussion to show you exactly what will be accomplished in phase 1, but high level, it's the ramp, an ADA accessible bathroom, and getting the fireplace working again and making sure the circulation desk is there. Part 2 of phase 1 would be the children's area, some of those other things on that first floor. The goal was that no matter who occupies that building, it needs to be ADA accessible. It has to be ADA accessible. That was the biggest complaint we were getting from users. And so the commitment that was made by the council at that time, or the direction given to staff, was that you guys would authorize up to $550,000 to be spent on that phase 1, and that 50% of the funds needed to be raised from other individuals. And so phase 1, part 1, we have successfully matched our contribution to phase 1, part 1. We have a grant secured that's going to be announced soon regarding SHPO. We've raised funds from individuals as well. And CATL has contributed some of the technology expenses through their contribution to the project. So we have successfully done that in phase 1, part 1. Phase 1, part 2, we still have to fundraise for, and that would be the next stage.
And just to be clear, I don't recall any significant concerns by those that did any analysis of the building regarding the foundation. I'm not saying that some things didn't need to be repaired, but am I forgetting something? Was there some issue with the foundation that I don't recall?
No, there's some site work we need to do and some things like that, drainage areas and things like that, but nothing that they felt could not be addressed.
Okay. So is there any other discussion on the motion to delete the library phase 1, part 1?
Do you know ballpark what was the second part that's needed for raising of phase 1, part 2?
Well, it's $275,000 in the CIP, so half of that.
Then part 2 is
phase 2. So phase 1, part 1 is phase 1 is first floor. Phase 2 was looking at the basement and the upper stories. It was given to us very clear direction from council in our last discussion that was off in the future. It was likely going to continue to be pushed forward until there was an actual need by CATL to expand their services, and that they would be a greater partner in that. So we're very much committed from a staff perspective that our priority is phase 1. And that phase 2 is a wish that, hey, if somebody came and wrote us a check, we would love to move forward with, but that's not going to be the priority for us right now.
If you recall, phase 2 included an elevator that would
Yep.
go from the basement to the
Yeah.
second floor and everything would be reconfigured. There'd be a number of reconfigurations, but Cattle was very comfortable. If we could just get phase one done, they would have a very functional, efficient and flexible library space that they thought would serve the city of Mason very well. So we've raised over 110,000 so far,
Mhm.
which gets us to the half of the 220 that is phase one, part one.
And by raise, that's that grant, that's the SHPO grant.
Grant,
Well,
donation,
and direct contributions as well.
several donations. Is there
Phase
any?
one, part one is listed at 325,000.
No, it's 225. Well, it's 225.
22, it says 325 on my page.
Yeah, it's 325.
I don't see, I don't have it as 220. I have it as 225.
2017 B5 small b 325.
In 21, 22.
So it's about 225 is what it should be.
Oh, let me confirm. It should be 225, yes. In my document, it says that, so I don't know if there's a previous document that got,
The one I
Switch.
got in my book, the one that came in my book.
Well, I think we've established that you can't pay attention to the one in the book. It's wrong in several places that we already know
Why
about.
the hell they give it to me then?
well, you gotta remember, there had been some adjustments since the joint workshop. If you're using the one that was presented at the joint workshop, we did correct, actually in the workshop, we identified that as a correction, 225 for the library. I'm seeing my notes here.
Yeah, but the budget book has the old chart. That's the
Oh.
problem. The budget book, this chart right here that you can't see.
Those copies were made before the joint workshop. That's why.
But it's 225, correct? What's in the chart?
Correct.
In the
It's
packet
220.
is correct. Is there any other discussion on the motion to delete 2017 B5B?
Leon, what do you want to do with it? Like move it down the road or just consider other options?
Well, just because it's removed doesn't mean it goes away forever. But like I said, I think that there's some other opportunities out there right now that haven't been researched that could serve the city better. And rather than putting a pile of money, whether it's somebody else's or whether it's the city's money, putting a pile of money into a building that's just not worth it. I think somewhere in this narrative, it was stated that we were replacing another building because it outlived its usefulness. And I think, in my opinion, that's about where we're at with this one. But we can't use the same analogy. We don't even know what it's worth. And before we
don't
sink
know.
any money into anything, we would normally have it appraised.
Well, I really, as has already been mentioned, one of the things that the council made clear previously that the city manager's been marching to is that we wouldn't spend a nickel on this building until we owned it outright. And there were a number of deed restrictions that I know the city manager has worked very hard with Vevay Township, the county, and the school system, because they were the three entities that were also named as having an interest in the line of ownership if the city stopped using the building as a library. It's my understanding that everybody signed off on that except for the school, which is planning to meet and take action in April. But the school doesn't have an ownership interest per se. They would simply be required to operate it as a library if Vevay owned it. But Vevay has already, as I understand it, issued their, they've removed themselves from the deed, as has the county. So for all intents and purposes, the city now does own it. But I think it would be a pretty disingenuous thing to even consider that we're owning this building from the standpoint of its value for dollars. We're owning this building because we've got a commitment that we've made over several years and was reinforced when we had it evaluated a few years ago by the community, that a library downtown was something that was wanted very, very strongly. So that's why we, to this point, been considering keeping it and improving it as a library. If there are other options, I guess I would ask council members to go get the data and bring it in. I mean, if the Nazarene Church is available and the price is reasonable, This is just approving a CIP. We're not approving a bid. You know, we've still got a little time here, but we've been kicking this can down the road for 20 years. And the building's not getting any newer, and it does need some work, and it certainly needs ADA accessible. It needs a bathroom on the first floor that's available to the public. The other aspect of this is it was going to be a bathroom that was available 24/7 to the public. It was going to be structured so people could go into that building and use that bathroom when the library was closed. So there were a number of things going on here, but I guess I just want to make sure that's out there, that everybody understands all the story about why we're where we're at.
Yeah, I understand. I know the history of how it was passed around like the football, because nobody wanted to keep the building. But, and we've, like you said, we've kicked this thing down the road for 20+ years, but we've used the same logic. So the same logic has come with it for the last 20-some years. There hasn't been anything new or anything exciting along those lines.
What
Mr. Mayor,
what intrigued, sorry, no.
Councilmember Vogel?
What intrigues me about this is, yes, this council, majority of this council did direct the city to move forward with this library renovation. There wasn't enough support then to look into the Nazarene space or potential revenue for the city and renting out. Yeah, there's just so much space there for activities, dances, whatever, parking lot space. And so I'm intrigued by Councilmember Clark, because now there looks like interest to explore something else that could kind of maybe change it up, and it might be good. So I don't know, I like it.
Let's vote on this motion and then see where that goes. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to be clear that Councilmember Clark has mentioned, you know, we've been here before, we've had these conversations before. I view this approach as different than maybe what you've experienced in the past. We approached it with a very realistic, how do we make this work in a feasible way? How do we separate it so that we know that, you know, less than 50% of the users are outside of the city. So we committed to only putting in 50% of the cost. I was charged as the city manager to, one, clear deeds and put my name on the line, promising these entities that we were moving forward with this project in this way in order for them to release that deed, to then also raise the money of over $100,000 to, if there's any indication, we're going to go back to those funders and people that have committed checks and say, wait, never mind, we're switching gears now. I would really have a hard time with that from a professional perspective. I was given a directive, I followed it, a resolution was passed in support of that project and in support of those grant funds. And I was also given a directive to go before other government entities and explain what our approach was to convince them to release a deed that they also evaluated, did they have value in? And so I would just really caution us from moving off of that trail. And if we do decide to not move forward at this time, we will have to return the SHPO grant. And I don't think they would be interested in this project again. If we were, right now, they're a partner. But if we deny grant funds that they've provided to us in a time when they were already tight, we're going to have a struggle getting grant funds from them again.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Clark.
I appreciate your statements, Deb. But I'm not beholden to a decision that was made by a previous council, unfortunately for everybody. And I would really not have any kind of an issue with going forward with any of this kind of a project if we were addressing what I understand are the real issues with this thing. We're going to dress it up, we're going to make it look nice, but we're not addressing the heating plant and the radiators and those kinds of things that are in bad repair in there that need to be taken care of. We're not addressing the foundation issues. We're not, it's got that slate roof. Years ago, when they had problems with it, they couldn't even find anybody in the country that would come and work on it. So there's just a lot of issues with that building. And I think I understand it's got to be ADA, and that's one of the issues. But let's put in a nice ramp and have it all fall in the basement. That's my point. If we want to prioritize and fix the infrastructure of the thing to make it sound and make it so it's going to stay there for a number of years, then I'm all in favor of it. but to just dress it up and let it go just because it's gonna look nice, that doesn't really address the shortcomings of the building. That's what my concern is.
Councilmember Ferris.
If you recall, consumers actually replaced the heating plant in the basement, so that has been taken care of completely.
And I was going to comment again, Deb, isn't correcting things like foundation, heating and all that part of part 1 of phase 1?
Yes, we're dealing with plumbing, mechanical,
Yes.
drainage, all of
These
those
issues
things.
won't be addressed. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer,
No,
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes or no?
I'm thinking, no.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No,
Councilmember Clark,
I'll stay true to my convictions. I'll say yes.
Councilmember Joshua,
Oh,
Mayor Whipple.
no. The motion fails 1-6. Is there any other discussion on the CIP? Anything? So then we have before us resolution 2021-06, which is adoption of the CIP for fiscal years 2021 through 2027 as amended in this meeting 3 times. Is there any further discussion on it? Could we have the roll call? I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
can you just clarify the 3 amendments? I believe one was the furniture. I believe one was the,
We removed the replacement of rental equipment and furniture. We moved the Maple Street Bridge from 2022-23, or sorry, from 25-26 to 22-23. And I think actually it's only 2 things. I'm sorry, I was counting the boat and motor, but that was last meeting.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Is that accurate, Clerk Jarvis, as far as you know?
I mean, the boat would be included in the modification of the CIP though, because we never got to that last meeting.
That's right. We decided to take it out, but we didn't actually approve the CIP with it removed. So there are 3 items. So could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Schaefer,
no,
Councilmember Vogel,
Yes.
Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes,
Councilmember Clark,
No,
Councilmember Joshua,
yes,
Councilmember Ferris,
yes,
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. The resolution is approved 5-2. Clerk and Schaefer. All right. That brings us to, let's see, we have no new business, so we would have adjournment of this meeting. But before we do that, I don't believe, I know the city manager and I did not anticipate this taking 2 hours. I am not comfortable spending a lot of time on a budget presentation now after 2 hours of this. If the council wants, we can reschedule the budget, or we can get started and go partway through the presentation and whatnot. But I don't think meetings that go much past 2 hours are very productive, especially on something as important as the budget. So I'm kind of throwing that out there before we adjourn this meeting to get some council sentiment on what you want to do as far as the budget is concerned.
I am fine with going
How
on.
long's,
Mhm.
how long's the presentation?
I suspect Deb's presentation, based on the slides, is going to be 1.5 hours. Just the presentation.
Well, that's longer than usual. All right,
Well, 60 slides, so it's probably going to be at least an hour and maybe a little more. And
Mayor Whipple,
discussion. Yes.
if I'm correct, we did have some problems getting everybody together on this date. So what is our deadline? We have to have it approved by,
The second meeting in May.
okay. I'd rather go ahead and do it. We're all here, we're all together.
Councilmember Schaefer?
If we postpone it, is it gonna be another Zoom meeting or is it gonna be live?
Jerry, you know as well as I do, we don't know. It all depends on when it's postponed to and what the rules are then.
Well, we can go live now. Am I correct?
Up to the council, yes. The council right now is in Zoom mode, but you're correct. The council could vote to undo that when it's allowed.
Which won't happen.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'll just say I'm comfortable moving forward tonight with two preconditions. One, that we have a 5-minute recess before we go right into it. And then I think it would be fair for the city manager to present her budget presentation in full without questions. And then we can come back for questions or discussion later. Because if we interrupt her, it's going to take longer than an hour and a half.
Okay, let's take 10 minutes and then so we'll reconvene at 8:15 for the city council workshop on the budget with the understanding that we don't interrupt the city manager while she's giving her presentation, except for extremely dire circumstances.
Mr. Mayor,
All right? Yes, ma'am.
are we using the same Zoom link for coming back for this budget
We're
meeting?
just coming back to this meeting, right?
You don't even leave.
Just
You don't have to leave.
So this meeting is now adjourned. Be back here in 10 minutes.